We have shared hundreds of podios, podcast videos, on how to have a successful acting career. We've talked about acting techniques, business practices, creative mindsets, even how to self-tape your auditions so that they're really good. Yet, there is an elephant in the room. Something large and imposing that needs to be dealt with. Just like an elephant, it's not scary, but rather its very existence can influence and affect us in big ways we never thought possible. How's that for a tease? Please find out what the elephant in the room is all about on this episode of Casting Actors Cast, the podcast for actors.
It's time for another episode of Casting Actors Cast, insights for actors from a casting director. Here he is, your host, Jeffrey Dreisbach.
Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. I'm casting partner Jeffrey Dreisbach with the McCorkle Group in New York. How are you? I hope you're having a good day. Hey, listen, this is a really cool subject. I think this is kind of like an extension from last week's podcast a little bit, because I really want to go into this is that kind of reflection time of year when we set ourselves goals on New Year's Eve, and then a month later we're sort of beating ourselves up because we're not meeting the goals we set ourselves into. Do you know what I'm saying? So I thought this would be a really great extension from last week's podcast as well. And so hang in there with me. I think you're going to have some fun, and I think you're going to learn a little bit, hopefully, along the way. I'm so glad that you were here. This is that moment of the podcast where I get to say thank you. It means so much that you're tuning into Casting Actors Cast. We're over 65,000 downloads of the podcast. Those folks who have chosen to be regular listeners of the podcast have also been sending in reviews on their platforms that they're getting the podcast in. iTunes, Spreaker, Google Podcasts. I mean, there's just all of those platforms that Casting Actors Cast is on. And I really appreciate those folks who have written to me, but also have written those reviews, because they help a lot. I simply am here to try and grow a like-minded community of creative folks so that they can feel inspired, that they can feel good about themselves in this most challenging time we find ourselves in. I was an actor for 20 years. I made my living as an actor, and I learned so much. And now I've been a casting director for over 12 years now, and I feel so good about being able to give back those things that I got, but also those things that I didn't get when I was an actor. And, talking about the subject matter today, an elephant in the room, I think is exactly the kind of thing I would have wanted to hear while I was in the midst of my career as an actor. Anyway, if you haven't checked out the website yet, please do so. It's castingactorscast, all one word.com. And there you're going to find some more information about the podcast. You're going to find show notes called Jeff's Jots. And every one of the podcasts has a single page PDF of the show notes. So you can get some information in writing. You can follow along. You can hang on to some of these jots, these Jeff Jots, so that it'll help retain some of the information that we're sharing in each of these podios, in each of these podcasts. Also, there's, if you fill out the form, it says, dive into the talent pool. You're going to find a 100-page free, absolutely free downloadable PDF book on doing voice work called Conversation Pieces Out of the Studio, the voiceover workshop for professional actors. It's all about doing voice work. There are workshop elements that you can do. There's different additional copy, how to set up a studio, all of that information that you might be interested in, 100% free of charge. Also, there is a free video, Casting Directors Secrets, what they don't want you to know. But in this 20-minute free exclusive video, which you can only get if you fill out that form that says dive into the talent pool. And I've always said this, and it still is true. I don't do anything with the information that you give me. It's a place where you fill out your name, your email address, and then you can leave me a note. A lot of times, actors will leave questions, and I cover those questions in future podcasts. So something to think about. Just by going to the website, you have access to all of that. Let's take just a quick moment, shall we, before we jump into our elephant in the room subject? Here's a shout out to my good friends at Actors Connection. Guess what? All of their classes are online. Yeah, you can take all kinds of workshops, intensives, all from industry professionals. So hello to my friends at Actors Connection. You got to check them out. So what does an elephant in the room really mean? You've heard the phrase, right? Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. So in my mind, something so obvious but doesn't get any attention, something that is blatantly in front of you, but for some reason you choose to ignore. Now that's kind of the practical definition of the elephant in the room, right? Would you agree? The second is, I guess, the real reason for what is happening. So we can circumvent and explain away certain things, but when we are just simply in our quietest moments really looking at the reality of a situation, it can be a big deal and it can be an elephant in the room. So that leads to the third thought I have about what it is when we say elephant in the room is really, it's an avoidance of reality. When it comes to, I don't know, let's talk about your acting goals. The elephant in the room, basically, are you ready? Is you. We really believe that external circumstances are limiting us, don't we? We say COVID, the lack of any real opportunities that are out there for actors, the fact that you had to leave where you were living and come home for a while and be with family, that just put a damper on all things creative for yourself. There are challenging elements of your relationships. It's the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the significant other's fault that we're not further along in our career. So we're looking at all of these other things that are in our lives and that we feel these external elements are something that we are responsible for where we are right now. Of course, you know what? If you really look at it, it's important that you just simply take a look at you. Really. And now listen to me. I don't mean that this is being harsh on yourself. Of course, you just simply cannot beat yourself up over your situation. But sometimes I think taking a good hard look at yourself and simply say, what do I want? Really? What do you want? What do you really want? If you want a career, then good. That's excellent. Now you know what you want. And if you don't know what you want, if you're not sure what the future holds for you, and none of us know what the future really holds for us, but if you have an idea about where you would like to go with your career, where you would like to go with your creative self, then the idea of simply asking the question will plant a seed that oftentimes you'll start getting motivated, you'll start seeing the results. Now, I know you've heard this phrase, but everything happens for a reason, after all. Yeah, everything does happen for a reason, but it's important that addressing the reality of where you see yourself is embracing your reality so that you can move forward with your plan. Here's how you can do that. Here's how you can move forward, and here's how you can look that elephant in the eye and make decisions and choices that are going to be the right decisions and choices for you. First of all, realistic goals. Reasonable, realistic goals about your next best step, your next step in your career, your next step in your acting work. It's everything from joining a class to moving back to the city or making yourself available for the local professional theater company, whatever it is, but reasonable, realistic goals that make sense to you. That's not going to be a hard ask. You're not going to have to force yourself to do anything. Because why? It's reasonable. It's realistic. It makes sense for you. So be easy on yourself, but make those realistic goals for yourself. And you'll find that those steps aren't like drudgery. They're going to be a little bit easier just because you're addressing it the way you are. The second, I suggest that you change your routine. You need to change your routine in order to challenge the status quo. You know, if you are waking up late every day because there's just nothing really to get up for, and you're going to bed later at night because you're watching a lot of television, or you're playing a lot of video games, or you're just kind of bored and not quite sure what to do, that can be such a painful place to be. I know. I've certainly been there in my life. I know exactly what that feels like. But if you can change that pattern just a little bit, one example would be to decide that you're going to get up a little bit earlier. You're going to get up an hour earlier. So instead of 9 o'clock, you're going to get up at 8. Instead of 7 o'clock, you're going to get up at 6. Challenge those patterns just a little bit so that you can help make the decisions that you need to make about being more productive. The next thing is, of course, I've said this in many podcasts, and I'm just going to keep on reiterating because I can tell you the value of this is really, really special, and that is have a plan. Have a plan in writing. Make it a checklist of what you need to do this week, of what you need to do this month, what you need to do this year. Writing it down, there's just something about that the creative person really responds to. Also, you probably know this already, but the prefrontal cortex of your brain responds when you are looking at that list. It just is kind of a weird, magical thing that happens, that your brain will work on these things even without you being aware. But putting it down on the list makes a big, big difference. So that's why I really would love for you to try that and let me know if that works out for you. Let me know if this is helpful for you. I think it will be, but I don't know unless I hear back. So you can certainly send me an email if you want. It's castingactorscast@gmail.com if you need an email address. I'd love to hear if you're able to write down a list. Let me just tell you another story about writing a list. And my mother used to tell me this. Whenever you're making a list, the first thing on your list would be 1, make list. And then you could check it off. So just on the very first thing on the list is that you've done something. You've accomplished something. You've made the list. I know, as silly as it sounds, it really is kind of cool. It really does make good sense if you do it. And then, of course, the next step is to stick to the plan that you write. Decide that makes sense. It's logical. You're addressing it directly. I need to do this. I need to do this class. I need to make some inroads into my financial situation so that I can afford to have some time so that I can audition. Whatever the decision is, stick to the plan. Or if that doesn't work, guess what? Rewrite the plan. Decide that the plan is going to change. You don't have to stick to the plan in the sense that if you don't get it done, you're a failure, you're a loser. Why did you write it down if you didn't have any intention of doing it? The idea is that you are in the driver's seat. You are in complete control. You are the CEO of your own company. So simply rewrite the plan to suit your new situation. Things change. And you need to be malleable, good word, to those things that change in your life. And that's really okay to re-strategize or to reset those goals. Number 5, try something new. or something spontaneous, something unexpected. You could, let's say, okay, let me just try a new class. Listen, there are all kinds of even free classes online. You can just do a little bit of Google searching and you can find inexpensive classes. You could form a group of like-minded actors. There are already Facebook groups out there that you might consider joining. Hey, why not think about something different for yourself, like an improv class? I know a lot of actors who decide that this is a cool time to maybe do a little bit of therapy. I think therapy is really excellent for actors. The more you know yourself, the more you know how you operate, the better you are in making choices for a character you might be playing, whether it's in a theater, film, or television project. So maybe this is the time to think about some therapy. I think I endorse it. I think it's just a smart thing, and you're doing something for you. And I think there's value in that as well. So when we look at the elephant in the room, self-evaluation does not have to be a painful experience or becomes, frustrating for you. It doesn't have to be a frustrating exercise. I know that we all have this imagination that creates what we really think we want, and then we try to get that, and then we just disappoint ourselves. So those aren't the kinds of goals that I'm talking about. The elephant in the room is a realistic understanding about where you are and where you would like to be. And putting that down on paper and deciding the way in which you are going to achieve that is what we're talking about here today. For example, the first thing I would suggest doing as you address the elephant in the room is don't call yourself an elephant. Don't call yourself an elephant, for starters. You are not the elephant in the room, although I'm saying you are the elephant in the room. I'm saying the elephant is just something big and imposing right in front of us that we should just simply take a look at. The other thing is use your creative imagination to plan what you consider the next right thing to do in your acting and in your career. It shouldn't be painful to look at this elephant in the room, because this is really a fun task. It really is kind of fun to imagine and see yourself in the near future, see yourself a year from now. And guess what? Act like that now. Behave like you want to be a year from now. Just deciding that that's the way you are going to behave now is a way that you're making the best choices for you. Now, as you know, honestly, we've been through so much these past couple of years. The great news, I think it's great news, is that as a creative person, you really can embrace a realistic, fantastic idea of what you want for your future. It's simply a matter of dreaming big and being truthful, being realistic, and honoring yourself when you look at the elephant in the room. I am Jeffrey Dreisbach. Thanks for tuning in. This is Casting Actors Cast.
Thank you for joining Casting Actors Cast. Please don't forget to review, like, and share Casting Actors Cast wherever you get your podios podcast videos. Thanks. I'm Megan Grace Martinez.